Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Dr. Vijay Bhatia. Today we are going to talk about behavior. What affects our behavior? What affects our behavior is what we have learned, what we have experienced as a child when we are growing up, interactions with environment, with others, with your own learning, with your parents, with your peers in the class, and it is learning about the present, memories about the past, and thinking about the future, other people involved in your interactions and what they have said to you and how is it affects you, and that is going to decide how you are going to behave. It also depends upon your environment. If you face with a stressful situation or circumstances, what effect it has on you and how you react to that. These all are learned and set up in your mind as they are firm beliefs. And from these beliefs, you develop some kind of schemas. This is a group or system of putting things together in your mind, and you develop schema. We'll talk about more about this. So basically it is interaction between you, environment and others, what you have learned for your whole life from your childhood. And the important factor here is that stress plays a bigger role in your learning. You feel comfortable or uncomfortable in the situation. In this is you, this is your environment, these are other people. How comfortable do you feel? How stressful do you feel? What were the situations where you find difficult to cope with? Where were the things that gave you stress, meaning physical symptoms, emotional symptoms? So what is stress? A state of mental or emotional strain or tension making you feel uncomfortable, resulting from any adverse or demanding circumstances. And responses to stressful events have three main components: an emotional response, a somatic response, and a psychological response. Emotional response and somatic response may be of two kinds. The first kind is, what if you are posed with a situation where you feel threat to your life, to your family, to your work, to your place of living. That will induce autonomic arousal, leading to increased heart rate, increased muscle tone, dry mouth, sweating, muscles getting tense, and if it keeps on happening like that, you feel tired and lethargic as well. The other events in your life are mainly about the separation and loss. There is a fear that you're going to lose, or you actually lose either a person or job or house, your basic needs. And if that happens, that mainly leads to depression, feeling tired, lethargic, and not able to cope, feeling hopeless and worthless. So these are the things that are induced by this. However, we as human beings have psychological mechanisms, and we develop those responses, and the main purpose of these responses is to minimize, reduce the impact of the event, thus limiting the emotional and somatic reactions. And this is done by mainly two groups of psychological mechanisms. One is coping strategies, and the other one is mechanisms of defense. Stressful event can be present now, or it might have happened in the past, and how you coped with that and how it affected you in the past is still in your memories. You might have felt that you were abused as a child by your loved ones or by others. You might have felt abandoned by your parents. Both parents are working and leaving you alone, sometimes not even with enough food or um, basic necessities. You might have been a prisoner of war or prisoned somewhere or taken into some confinement space. You might feel that you have entrapped in the past. All these things are going to affect you. Rejection from friends, from family, for maltreatment from your friends, teachers, others, critical comments from others, and catastrophic incidents. Something major things happened like earthquakes and stuff like that where you lost everything, or storms or floods that have affected you as growing up, or there were major losses of your parents, of somebody you loved, or things that you loved, or there were constant threats from other people or from the nature. And also your thinking about the future, worry about the future, they are causing you stress. You don't have enough finances, you are not in work, where you're going to get work, and is there enough stability in your life, and uncertainty about yourself, your health, your family, your children, your parents. All these things can be stressful. And how do we cope with them? There are certain coping mechanisms of any stressful situation, either in the present or in the past. We might have dealt with those with either using the coping strategies, which can be adaptive and which can be maladaptive. So coping strategies, adaptive, can be like problem solving or emotion reducing. So if you have come across with a stressful situation, your tendency is to involve your coping strategies, and hopefully they are adaptive, and you will involve things like problem solving, and this can be used to make adverse circumstances less stressful. You can watch my video on how to deal with the coping strategies in reactions to um, stressful experiences. Emotion reducing adaptive coping strategies can enhance adaptation to stressful circumstances. However, people can use, or sometimes they do use, maladaptive coping strategies. And what are these maladaptive coping strategies? Like using alcohol or taking illicit drugs or non-prescription drugs, or they can harm themselves to release the anxiety, or they get into the histrionic behavior, or they get into the aggressive behavior. Although sometimes these things help in the short term, but in the long term they can be more damaging than you would think. So reactions to stressful experiences, we have seen that coping strategies work and there are defense mechanisms. However, the main responses we have to any stressful event, either we have a fight and flight mode or we freeze. Whatever the experience is, if it is strong enough that you have survived, you have adapted, that your anxiety has come low, but over a period you have learned something and how to adapt that. Let's say in a stressful situation, you recognize your symptoms, that you were getting emotional, your muscles were getting tense, you were sweating a bit, your heart was racing. So you want to get away from that situation. So that will be, you have a flight from that, and then as a result you have recovered quite well, safe, and your heart rate and anxiety has come down. So just by going away from the situation called flight, that you have helped yourself to come to the comfortable situation. So either fight, flight, or freeze. If these things keep on happening again and again, what happens is you develop some kind of schema in your mind that this helps, and next time you probably will tend to use them. So what is schema? In psychology and cognitive science, a schema describes a pattern of thought or behavior. So it is a pattern of thought or behavior that organizes categories of information and the relationships between among them. It can also be described as a mental structure of preconceived ideas that you have learned in the past as a child growing up, and you develop a framework representing an aspect of the world or a system of organizing and perceiving new information. Schemata influence attention and the absorption of new knowledge. People are more likely to notice things that fit into their schema while reinterpreting contradictions to the schema as exceptions or distorting them to fit. Schemata have a tendency to remain unchanged because they are fixed in your brain. You have learned over a period of time in a number of different circumstances and situations to those stressful events. So they remain unchanged even in the face of contradictory information. So if somebody tries to tell you or you yourself experience different to that, they tend not to change. Schemata can help in understanding the world and the rapidly changing environment. People can recognize new perceptions into schemata quickly, as most situations do not require complex thought using schema. So if you're using schema, then it is easier for you to think straight away like that. Like somebody has abused you in the past in the authority. You see another authority person, you know that this person is a user and going to harm you in one way or the other. Since automatic thought is all that is required. People use schemata to organize current knowledge and provide a framework for future understanding. Examples of schemata include academic rubrics, social schemas, stereotypes, social roles, scripts, worldviews, and archetypes. In Piaget's theory of development, children construct a series of schemata based on the interactions they experience to help them understand the world. What happens if you develop maladaptive schema right from the beginning? In this case, what happens? Let's take an example that there was a stressful event or you had a stressful experience as a child, that you were abandoned by your family and there was instability in the family, that you were left alone, you were left with people who abused you, you were left in situations which was cold with not enough food, you were not cared for the way you should be as a child, as a growing up, and even when you needed others and they were not there. So what kind of schema will you develop? Probably you will think people are unpredictable. That is a kind of belief you have developed, that you cannot uh, uh, predict what the person is going to behave. The people you trust, you want them to be there. They were not there. They just abandoned you and you felt quite unstable when you were growing up. In that, if you keep on upholding that belief, that schema in your mind, What will you do in the future when you grow up as an adult? You will select partners who cannot make a commitment and remain in the relationship. So you will select some partners and you will not commit too much to them, because as a child you have learned that the people are unpredictable. So you're not going to make any commitment, although you may remain in that relationship, but you're not committing anything, because you have learned that people are unpredictable. They can change. They may not be there when you need them. What happens if you want to, if you have learned this, that people are unpredictable, and now as an adult you want to avoid those things? You don't want to get into those situations where you think that people are unpredictable. So in that situation you will probably avoid any intimate relationships, any close relationship, because you know they will probably not be there, they will probably not be trustworthy, and they will not, you cannot predict that they will be there. So you will try to avoid making those relationships in the first place, any intimate relationships. On the other hand, from this experience that people are unpredictable, you want to fight and act opposite to that. No, you will say, yes, I can trust them, and I want to make sure that they trust me, and they are predictable. So what happens in this situation where you are fighting with that thought in your mind? You cling to and smoothers the partner to point of pushing partner away. So you are behaving as if you are unpredictable. You have a relationship, you you care for them, but at the same time you are pushing that partner away. Vehemently attacks partner for even minor separations. So even if they are minor separations, because as a child you have learned they are unpredictable, you become angry with them. Why did you leave? Why did you go away, even for short periods? So they are fighting for the schema that they have developed, and there is a threat that it might happen again. So they are controlling their partner so that they can not be in the same situation where their feelings were hurt as a child. What about as a child if you have been abused and you develop a mistrust, and your schema will be you cannot trust anyone. And if you hold that in your mind, you will select abusive partners and permit them to abuse you, because that is what you are holding, that you cannot trust them. Let them carry on the way they are, let them carry on abusing you, and probably you are worth that, and people want to use you, and let them keep on using you, or in this case abusing you, because they are taking more out of you. On the other hand, you might want to fly from that. You don't want to be in that situation. You want to avoid that thing happening again. So you avoid becoming vulnerable and trusting others. You do not trust others. You are not vulnerable. You are developing confidence. You are developing skills, and you don't want to meet those people who you think will probably abuse you. And mostly because that is your belief, you will avoid a lot of other people, and you will avoid becoming vulnerable. Whereas on the other hand, if you fight for that, you will not anybody else abuse you, and you actually become an abuser. You abuse other people. You get there before others can get. You tend to go to the extreme. You become abuser. You try to become a bully. So you are not letting anybody abuse you anymore, and you will not trust anybody else, and you will mistrust others in the case. As a child, if you were emotionally deprived and you develop the schema, no one cares about me or wants me to help me. So if you keep on holding that belief, you select abusive partners and permits abuse. Whereas if you avoid that, or if you want to have a flight from that, you become vulnerable and trusting others. And if you want to flight, uses and abuse others, you become you abuse others. So what about if, as a child, you were given a lot of shame and there was some kind of defectiveness? As a growing up, your friends will say you are not good looking, your skin color is not good, you are not walking properly, you cannot win the game, and there is some kind of shame on you all the time. No one cares about me or wants to help me. That will be your schema, that there is nobody I can who will care for me. If you keep on holding that belief, you select critical and rejecting friends and put yourself down. So you let others keep on making those critical comments because you are getting used to it. You have, as a child, grown up with that kind of attitude, and you don't want any problems there because otherwise you will feel uncomfortable. So you are satisfied with that. Let others people keep on criticizing you throughout the life, and you select partners and friends. Whereas if you want to fight that or have flight from that, you try to avoid anything that will put you in that situation where people criticize you. So you avoid expressing true thoughts and feelings and letting others get close to you. You will avoid those people. You will not tell your personal feelings to other people so that they will criticize you, especially your things that might you feel that you did not achieve, or there was some defect, there might be some shame. So you will not even discuss these things. However, if you want to act opposite to that, then you will criticize and reject others. Before they say anything to you, you will get to them. You will criticize them. And that while seems to be perfect to you, because you don't want to be in that situation anymore. What about social isolation and alienation? The schema will be that you feel different. You don't fit in the same category. You are a minority. You came from a different country. Your culture is different. You are not belonging to the same area. Your behaviors, your dress, your clothes are different. You are a migrant. You are feeling social isolation. You don't have many friends. You don't have many culture, uh, and you are isolated and you feel alienated. And if you keep on holding that schema in your brain, you will try to, at social gatherings, you will focus only on differences from others rather than similarities. So you will focus that my color is different, I'm wearing different dress, my behavior is different. So you will always keep on thinking like that. Whereas if you want to fly from that situation, you will completely avoid going to those social situations or meeting those friends or going into those kind of groups. You will probably meet your own group in a temple or wherever you belong. You may not want to go to the parties or weddings which belongs to different culture, different group of people. Whereas if you are acting opposite or you are having flight to that, you become like a chameleon. You try to dress like them, you try to listen to the same music, you try to fit into that culture, you try to overreact in a way. And even in that situation, you might look a little bit different and silly because you cannot change the skin of your color, color of your hair, color of your height, your muscle build and everything. You cannot be them because you are a minority, you are a different culture. but you tend to overreact and try to fit into those clothes, into those things, going to the beach, and going to the pubs or going to the casinos and those kind of things, where you try to fit into that culture. However, you still feel that that gives you comfort, because you are in the fight mode and you want to act opposite to what you are. What about as a child that you have been very much dependent on somebody, on your mother or your father, all the time, at every situation? You might be suffering from some kind of illness or some kind of problems, and they were there for you all the time, even for simple things. You will develop a schema. You can't do anything without someone helping me. And as an adult, if you keep on holding that schema, you will ask significant others, either your parents or spouse, to make all important decisions for you. So you have not taken the full responsibility to be independent, to act independently. You are dependent all the time on somebody else to help you, to make things for you, to support you, to make you feel comfortable. So you are dependent on others. However, as growing up, you wanted to say, no, I did not want to be dependent on others. My parents always looked after me. Now I want to be independent. You want to not be in that situation. So what will you do in that situation? You will avoid taking on new challenges. You don't want to take any challenge which you know you will not be able to finish, and you will not be able to complete, and you might have to ask other people. So you overall try to just avoid those challenges, such as learning to drive and other things. You will simply avoid those situations. And if you are in a fight mode and want to act opposite to it, you will overdo it. Become so self-reliant that he or she does not ask anyone for anything. You become counter-dependent. You want to help others all the time. You will not ask any help. If you can't complete, it doesn't matter to you. You will not ask because you are in that fight mode. This is the normal reaction to what we normally do if we face the situation, and if we face the situation for many years over a long period. We want to act, take this attitude, fight attitude or flight attitude, or just keep on holding with that kind of attitude. What about as a child you suffered harm, you were vulnerable, and you were probably ill, like asthma or diabetes, or some kind of club foot, or eyesight was poor. You will develop some schemas that always thinking, worrying something bad is going to happen to you because you are vulnerable. If you keep on upholding that schema when you grow up as an adult, you will obsessively read about catastrophes in the newspapers and social media and anticipate them in everyday situation. Something bad is going to happen, something you are not going to survive. Whereas if you develop that, look, I don't want to be in that situation anymore, then you will avoid going to places that do not seem totally safe. So that will be your avoidance schema. However, if you get into this fight mode and act opposite, you will probably act recklessly without regard to the danger. This is called counterphobic. This is happening in people who have, as a child, learned they were vulnerable, but as an adult, they want to fight for it, and they will act and do things that other people can't even reach and do or think about those things. So they become counterphobic. What about as a child you are underdeveloped self and there is enmeshment? You are not sure whether you are male or female, or you are a good person or not good person, or you are achiever or not achiever. There is always some kind of enmeshment. Your schema will be, I can't function without a particular person. And if you keep on holding that schema when you grow up, you tell mother everything. Even as an adult, you want to describe the things to the partner who you are living closely with, and you live through your partner because you feel enmeshed all the time. I might do mistake, I might do something wrong, I might not be perfect, I might not be able to complete this. So you are, it's not dependence, but you just want reassurance, and that you have somebody with you. And as a learning from that, you want to avoid those situations. As a psychological response, you will avoid intimacy. You will always try to stay independent, don't want to talk to anybody, don't want to tell to anybody, because the schema you learned, you are acting to avoid that thing happening to you again. Whereas if you get into the flight mode and act opposite to that, you try to become the opposite of significant others in all ways. So no matter what they are doing, you will do something opposite to what they are doing. What about failure as a child? If you haven't passed your exams in the class, if you haven't win the game, if you're playing cards, you haven't win, you have been loser all the time, your parents have called you, you are a failure, your friends have called you, you are a failure. The schema will be, I am a failure, and whatever I try to do, I will fail, or it won't be good enough compared to others. If you keep on holding to that schema when you grow up, does tasks in half-hearted or haphazard manner, so you are not confident, you are not feeling competent, you will do half-heartedly, will, because you are holding that schema in your mind. Whereas if you want to avoid that kind of schema, then you will avoid work challenges completely, and you will probably procrastinate on tasks. Whereas if you are in the flight mode or act opposite to your schema, and you will say that I am not failure, I am achiever, you become an achiever by ceaselessly driving him or herself. So the person is working so hard all the time, meeting the challenges, beating everyone else, and want to achieve themselves, because as a child they were as failure, but over a period of time they have developed this to act opposite to what they were as a child. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please press the like button, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. I see you in my other videos. I recommend that you watch the first video on this series about reactions to stressful experiences, which will be dealing with here and now more, and this lecture is more about the past experiences and how it affects your learning and how you react to them and overreact to those.